Okay, well, much appreciative of all the attendees today. So the point of this webinar is to just kind of outline the Adobe Creative Cloud release, their announcement on May 6th. They made a host of new announcements, as well as how that relates to the long-term vision and roadmap for Adobe as a whole, and then some tips and tricks to how to understand those licensing implications and how it's going to affect your current entitlement, present entitlement, and then future needs that you'll have with Adobe moving forward. All right, so just as mentioned, just going to go over roadmap and then the first offering of what Creative Cloud is and the VIP contract, and then a bit of strategy onto it as a whole. So first and foremost, let's just kind of begin with just a communications timeline. So what has Adobe been doing lately, and what's the roadmap for the future, for the rest of the year and moving into FY14? So a couple things have taken place already is that the removal of shrink box copies, that was on April 31st. So no more Office Max, Office Depots, Best Buys, Apple stores. You can no longer find retail box copies. Now, you will still be able to buy a box copy for some of the hobbyist software, which are the Photoshop Elements, Premiere Elements, and Lightroom. You will still be able to buy box copies there, but the Acrobats, the full-blown Photoshops and InDesigns and all the suites, you will not be able to buy box copies for. I'm going to skip over the May 6th because I do have a slide specifically addressed to that, but a couple points on the Acrobat side of the house. May 31st, anything that's Acrobat 8, whether it's standard or pro, loses the upgrade rights, so you can no longer upgrade to the latest and greatest version or Acrobat 11. So a very short-term red flag per se. So you have about 8 days left that you can upgrade any existing Acrobat 8 licenses, and that does apply to volume license as well as box copies. So great point of action there is just in case, if you have any box copies of Acrobat 8, you can still have the same volume license upgrade rights as a normal corporate edition volume license copy. Another major point is on June 26th, Acrobat 9, end of life. So that's end of life on the support side, so no security patches. So point of action there as well is if you standardize on Acrobat 9, just know full well that is a non-supported product by Adobe for security as of June 26th. June 17th, actually, the next point, inclusion of more products via the VIP. So basically what Adobe is going to do on June 17th is have a mass update to any subscription holder. So they're going to have 15 different products with over 150 different functionality updates that are going to be released. It's actually now escalating over 200, but the point is that they're ramping their update schedule greatly in the Creative Cloud subscription product as a whole. Another point, and this is positive for everyone, is that the Creative Cloud promotion price, which was $600 or $50 per month, has been extended throughout the entire year of FY13. Originally, it was just supposed to be a short-term promotion and then go to the standard MSRP of $70 a month or $840 per year, but that's been pushed off into FY14. So now where are they going? So the perpetual licenses, the incentives towards perpetual will be going away. To relate that, typically once, twice, maybe sometimes 3 times a year, Adobe will have a perpetual license incentive such as buy 3 Acrobats, get the 4th for free, 20% off a production premium upgrade. Those types of incentives will be diminished, and then you'll just see them not happening around that. All direction for Adobe around incentives and promotions will be directed 100% towards Creative Cloud and subscription products, as well as the inclusion of more products via the VIP. So as of right now, Creative Cloud is one bundled product, 22 different SKUs, or 22 different products within one line item SKU called Creative Cloud Team. Throughout the remainder of the year and into FY14, Adobe will be releasing different combinations of products, standalone products. Great example is Photoshop, the Acrobat side of the house as well. So as of right now, Creative Cloud is kind of everything in the kitchen sink in one line item. Throughout the remainder of the year, you'll be able to right size according to usage rights and usage and what your actual end users need. A couple points in Q4 and into FY14 are the emphasis of the VIP contract, which is actually the contract behind the Creative Cloud product, it will start to replace the traditional procurement methods of TLP, CLP, EA, ELA, and retail as well. So you'll see that there's more stress towards it, and eventually within FY14, Adobe will minimize and then discontinue any net new purchasing of any licensed Creative Suite-wise on existing TLPs, CLPs, and any volume license contract besides VIP. I'll touch on Creative Cloud Enterprise, but it is a high-end product for ETLA customers, which is actually the top-level agreement for Adobe. It will be full-blown release by the end of the year. It's just a management tool set for enterprise deployments of more than 2,000 to 5,000 seats of Creative Suite. So very specific. If anybody has any questions concerning CCE or Creative Cloud Enterprise, please let me know, and we can take it offline. So what did Adobe announce? So May 6th, kind of an important date when it comes down to it. So first and foremost, there is no CS7. Over the last 4 or 5 months, we've had different information leading in both directions. There will be a CS7, there won't be. There is absolutely no CS7 to be released, which means CS6 in its present form is the plateaued, the highest end product of perpetual Creative Suite that you could possibly buy. It has no availability of taking a CS6 and turning it into a CS7 because there is no release. And I just mentioned just briefly on the June 17th the hundreds of features that are going to be released, but I do have to stress that in relationship to there is no release, a perpetual CS6 versus the subscription product Creative Cloud Team, originally there aren't that many deltas. There's not that many functionality deltas. But by the end of June, there's over 350 differences in a perpetual CS6 versus the Creative Cloud and the subscription products. So it's apples and oranges. It's no longer comparable from product functionality perspective. Another big announcement was that perpetual licensing is not going away. I've already hinted to the fact that Adobe will be discontinuing CLP and TLPs, but as of right now, there's no definitive end date, and they had to make the public announcement that no, we are not forcing you into subscriptions, but we see the writing on the wall. We know where Adobe's going, so they can say you can still buy CS6 perpetually. I have to agree to that, but by the end of FY13 and into FY14, TLPs and CLPs will be diminished and then discontinued. Another last one is that nothing at all is changing on the Acrobat side of the house, and that you're getting a little bit of insider information here on the Acrobat 12 release. So no matter what, Adobe will have one more full-blown version of Acrobat. Typically at that time, they're going to offer, you can either buy Acrobat under the traditional models of TLP and CLP and EA, but you'll also be able to buy it under the VIP model as a subscription. So kind of relate that into a pure price point. Acrobat's an expensive product. There's a lot of competitors out there. So having the subscription offering lowers your overall investment cost to get towards Acrobat. And a couple other ones, just real brief, on the May 6th announcement is first and foremost the price reduction. So on the Creative Cloud product, Adobe originally was $50 a month or $600 per year, and they're having a limited promotion period of $480 or $40 a month until August 31st. So in essence, you can offer your end users every single Adobe desktop product, whether it's print and publishing, photographs, video, and all the management pieces for $40 a month. It's an absolute great deal. And then also the point products, as mentioned already, they're going to be released during the next 2 fiscal quarters. And then last one is just more or less a housekeeping thing for Adobe. They're changing their naming conventions. So they're kind of abandoning the CS model, and they're renaming the products as CC or Creative Cloud. And the reason they're doing that is that once they start to release those standalone point products, they had to have a naming convention in place. So more or less it's going to be called the CC products. So I do have to reiterate, this is the promotion incentive till the end of August. But they also made a minor announcement actually at the beginning of this week that has major implications. So the renewal price. Right now you can buy under promotion price for $480 per year, but you are obligated for your renewal next year. And that budgetary price, or MSRP, for Creative Cloud was $840. So what they've done is say, if you transact before the end of the month or the Adobe quarter end, you can lock in your $480 price for a full 24 months. So that is an absolute fantastic deal, and you're saving $360 an instance by transacting by end of month. So it definitely has it's a fiscal win by doing that. So I kind of hinted to a bit of just long term. Where's it going? Where is Adobe going in the grand scheme of it? So they're going subscription around Creative Suites. It's the absolute end game that they're going towards. And as mentioned already, the VIP or Value Incentive Plan, which is the contract behind those subscriptions, that's the end game. Within 24 to 36 months, every customer worldwide will be on a VIP contract or an ETLA contract, or just not run Adobe products at all. A lot of this is coming from the customer side, where there's a lot of different procurement methodologies, there's a lot of ins and outs with licensing, and you have certain rights under one contract and certain rights under another. So they're leveling the playing field and saying, okay, we want to have one contract worldwide. The only exception there, as mentioned briefly, is under the ETLA model. But as mentioned, that's an enterprise term license agreement for very large Adobe consumers. So as mentioned, if you want to discuss further, just let me know. And then I do want to point out from a products perspective that Adobe will go software as a service. So eventually it'll be basically point and check box. So which products do you need? Do you need a combination? Do you need point products or suites? And you'll be able to pick and choose the products that you need to fulfill your business needs. So in general, I don't want to get too in-depth when it comes down to product in the Creative Cloud, but I did want to say, what am I getting? What is this product? What is the corporate version? And what's the benefits of the actual product as a whole? So first and foremost, you're most current all the time. So anytime Adobe makes a new functionality, you gain that. So in the past, you'd have to wait for a full version release, typically 18 months. Now you are gaining that new functionality immediately. Once the Photoshop team makes a new button or a new feature or function, you immediately get it. And then the online services. So this isn't something that the end users will absolutely love. When it comes down to it, is the sync, store, and share. And something about the sync is you think it's about syncing files and that type, but in reality, you're syncing your preferences. So a great example, somebody on Photoshop maybe has 20, 30 preferences preloaded. If they go to their home PC, they need to preload all 18 to 20 of those preferences. So with the cloud, your preferences follow you anywhere. So productivity increases immediately. And then a lot of the steps, or a lot of the product inclusion around the publications, publishing applications and websites. Great example, Typekit. So Typekit is fonts. And frankly, when you line item out all the fonts, it's actually $25,000 worth of additional fonts that they're giving for free. So right there is a huge value for your end users on the availability. Get creative. You can use anything across the board, and now you have $25,000 worth of additional fonts, as well as the DPS, or Digital Publishing Suite. So using this license for free, it's included, I can publish an application or a website and immediately host up to 5 right to an iPad. So right there is the flexibility to have your end users create and not be limited according to, well, I don't have the license, so I can't do it. So this is more or less just my points and my value statement when it comes down to the Creative Cloud product is, first and foremost, price. That's fantastic. $480 for the promo price. The nice part about the cloud product is that in the past, you'd have to determine what language my end user needs it in. So worldwide deployment was always an issue. With Creative Cloud, 17 languages are immediately available, and it's worldwide deployment. So if you have subsidiaries or affiliates across the globe, you can deploy that product out there. An invoice, you can determine where the invoice should come out of. There's no limitation when it comes down to it. Personally, one of my favorite things is always the cost per product versus the cost per desktop. So Adobe's one of those softwares where typically a request will come in for, let's say, a Photoshop license. Have you looked at what else is on that desktop from an Adobe publisher perspective? Because if it's Photoshop and Acrobat, you're overspending when it comes down to it. Typically a suite is the better way to optimize that desktop. And then now with the Creative Cloud, more often than not, the cost of entry is going to be less money than the licensing the actual point product desktop products on that particular endpoint. Gone over a couple of the productivity and standardization and implementation perspectives of why it's valuable. From an implementation perspective, it's 10 times easier than navigating the LWS. And the reason for it is you list your name users within the site itself. So it's no longer, I have 10 Photoshops, but there's a disconnect of where those Photoshops are. So you'd have to manually track where they are. The new VIP and subscription model alleviates that concern. I'm going to get more into the compliance, but I think the main point is that the IT staff is in control and can maintain compliance all the time. I'll get into a little bit more on the IT deployment governance and how IT is in control, but one of the apprehensions on the Creative Cloud product was that the end users were in control. Now, IT is in control, 100% start to finish. So this is pointed more or less at, a product is a product, but when it comes down to it, where's the value in the product for an end user? And for the Creative Cloud product, having the latest and greatest features is great. It's a great thing to have, but it's the kind of the ancillary benefits that really makes the product as a whole valuable. And it all starts in the dashboard and the inclusion of Behance. So Behance is more or less your creative team's Facebook page. So in the past, you may have a wall of, let's say you're a magazine firm, you have a wall of documents and papers. It's disorganized. You don't know what's latest. You don't know what had modifications on it. You now can have a digital platform at which you can communicate across teams about files, about revisions. So I don't want to say it takes the place of instant message, but it's one more place where as a team you can see what everyone's working on, and that's the dashboard effect. So not only can you see the products that you have installed, but also what's going on in my creative department, what updates are available, whether or not IT is in control or if the end users are in control. You can always see, well, what is out there? And then also, you can see the files, what's been updated, what's been revised, and you can see immediately exactly what's going on in the creative workforce. From an IT perspective, and this matters, why does Creative Cloud alleviate some of your concern? So first and foremost, compliance. So in the past, if you bought 15 InDesigns, nothing technically stops you from installing that product 100 times. There's no key validation error. You can deploy. So frankly, Adobe was always a audit-happy company because mass over-deployments took place all the time. With the transition over to subscription, you now have identity-based licensing. So instead of 15 Photoshops and who knows where they are, you list out your end users. So you can see that Charlie.Weber has an instance, and you can see exactly how many instances you have remaining. Now, if you only buy 15 Creative Clouds, it is impossible to deploy out a 16th without having the invoicing process begin. So right there, the risk aversion of the potential for audits is alleviated right away just by that shift. And frankly, I like this a lot. Just because, just in the nature of the business, Adobe audits are painful, so this mitigates a lot of that risk. And then you can reassign using that management portal with ease. So it's just unassigned Charlie.Weber and reassign to George.Bush. Then also is the prorated costs. So pointed at IT, if you're looking to minimize cost and yet still get the functionality out to your end users, it prorates. So if you have seasonal spikes, so a great example, let's say you have 50 summer interns that start, don't start your VIP contract until the end of summer. That way, you don't need to license the product, you don't need to install it until the beginning of the summer, and then therefore only pay for 3 or 4 months of usage. And then you can right size on your anniversary date and say, okay, my interns are no longer here, I don't need those licenses, and you won't need them for another 8 months. So there is some strategy when it comes down to how you integrate and how you migrate over. But the point is that it prorates down to the months, so take advantage of it. Last point is, on the Adobe world, everyone needed the license and they needed it yesterday. So a lot of the times you have to escalate the purchase pattern. You have to wait for a PO. It has to go to a reseller. It has to go to Adobe. It could be 3 to 5 business days. So with Creative Cloud, all you need to do, and any of the subscription models, are enter in the alias, and you immediately can deploy. So literally you can deploy out 10 seconds after a request comes in. So I'm actually going to pause here before I kind of move on to more of the roadmap strategy and how can we take this knowledge and take it back. I'm going to open up the lines for any questions that may come in. One sec.
Yeah, hi Charlie. This question, you noted that we're looking at named user licensing, which we would have to, I guess, go to a web portal and maintain the information relative to each user that subscribes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And then with that name user, that one user can use unlimited devices on this subscription?
That's a good question. With the license, you get 2 installations, so laptop, desktop, or laptop and home PC. So you still maintain that secondary use rights. If you do need a 3rd instance, so let's say laptop, desktop, but they're just a workaholic and they need one from home, you can escalate with Adobe for a 3rd instance without having to buy an additional license. But it is limited technically to 2, but you have an escalation point and you can request more.
Okay, and then as far as where the software is used, you said it's global, so we don't have to worry about if we're buying for France and somebody in France now no longer needs that. We can use that subscription and have a named user in the U.S. or Italy or Japan.
It's an interesting conversation, and the reason for it is, in the past, you'd have to designate your deploy to country. So, you know, if you want to buy it in the U.S. and deploy to France, you have to designate that, and it dictates which price list and price point you need to use. With any of the Creative Cloud products, the validation process is simply the Adobe ID that's entered and not the deploy to address, which gives your organization flexibility of reharvesting. So they leave France, they're no longer with the company. You can take that license back and put Charlie.Weber. Well, Charlie.Weber can be anywhere in the world. So it's worldwide deployment, and you don't have to designate the deploy to country and still take advantage of your invoice point. So buy it out of the U.S., you get the U.S. price list. Buy it out of London, you have to deal with the Great Britain pound price list. So in the past, you're kind of hamstringed when it comes down to where the license can be allocated and whether or not you can reharvest it. Great example, you deploy to France, it's probably in the French language, but when you reharvest it, technically you're out of compliance if you deploy it out to the United States in English. You're supposed to deploy it out in French. But now with 17 languages, each particular instance and each end user can determine the language that they need. So reharvest it out of French, redeploy it in one of 17 languages and anywhere in the world.
Okay, great. And then last question, this has to do with audits. Has Adobe actually said anything about their approach to audits, or is this something that you're kind of projecting may happen? Because, I mean, there's going to be a lot of legacy software out there that Adobe's probably still interested in.
Yeah, a couple points there. So right in the terms and conditions for the VIP contract, it still has the verbiage of at any point in time, Adobe or a third party can enter an audit engagement. So it's still written into there. And to your second point, hybrid environments. Every customer is going to have a hybrid environment for at least another 18 to 24, maybe even 36 months. But once the transition over into a full subscription environment, Adobe audits are a thing of the past. There's not going to be the revenue potential from that compliance team for them to even bother. However, the next 18 months, this is, the subscriptions will be very easy from a compliance standpoint, but the point products and the perpetual products keep a very close eye on those installations, because this is basically the last chance for Adobe in the next 18 to 24 months. So they're going to be aggressive when it comes down to their auditing, but they're already number 3 on the Gartner list of most audited publishers, so they can, if they're going to beat Oracle and Microsoft on the top end, or Oracle, IBM, and Microsoft, we'll see.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Any other additional questions?
I've got a question about user reassignments or subscription reassignments. Doesn't that potentially cause any data that they've stored in their storage container to disappear?
And here's exactly how that works. When you reassign, you're reassigning the actual license. However, if they're utilizing the 100 gigabytes of cloud storage, only that end user or the person hypothetically that just left the organization can delete the files from that from the cloud storage. At this point in time, Adobe doesn't have an IT way of going into that end user's cloud storage and wiping out the files. So there's a rub, and that's a serious rub. So the reassignment, it's easy to reassign the license, but how do you pull back the data? How do you pull back the files that hypothetically could have been accessed at a Starbucks? Adobe does have some workarounds, some IT limitations that you can place on cloud storage. From the administration view, you can always see if cloud storage is being utilized, but knowing what's being used is one point, but if they all of a sudden leave the company, you're at a disconnect. So it's always end user that needs to wipe out those files. No matter what, though, once you reassign the license, after 90 days, that cloud storage gets wiped clean by Adobe. So from 0 to 90 days is what you have to worry about. 91st day, no matter what, if they left the organization, every file in that cloud storage is wiped clean. But you kind of hear my point, though. What about day 1 to 90? So frankly, that's a rub for me on the Adobe cloud storage as a whole, but Adobe knows it, and they're working diligently to get that fixed, because it's a huge objection point that we've heard time and time again when it comes to the product. Okay, so what do we do from here? How do we interpret the data and move on? So the first and foremost is understand what you own. And you can request through SoftwareONE, we can have a license intelligence report, or LIR, pulled. So it's your history report. It's a good standard practice across publisher lines. Microsoft's, the Oracle's is, well, what SKUs do I own? The nice part about the license intelligence reports, because you can pull reporting from the Adobe LWS site, the problem is it's Excel. It's just an Excel format, and it doesn't apply licensing principle. So great example, if you have 2 line items for a brand new license and then an upgrade license, it'll list out 2 products and 2 quantities. With the license intelligence report and applying license principle, where did those upgrades come from, and where does my entitlement lie now? So a great example in the lower right here, you'll see, you can buy an upgrade, you can buy a full seat, but what am I really entitled to at the end of the day to run? And it's interesting because the license reports that we can request for you are the actual reports that are used by Adobe Auditing. So at the end of the day, you know exactly how many versions, how many copies am I really entitled to run. The next point is huge, absolutely huge when it comes down to migration over to cloud products. Profile those point product users. What are people actually using out there? If you offer somebody a Ferrari, everybody's going to say yes. But if they're not actually using all the products, or it's just the Ferrari's just sitting in the garage, you're still paying for it. So the point is, when you look at the migration over to cloud, you almost get to wipe the slate clean and say, okay, entitlement is entitlement, but what do I actually need from Adobe products to succeed in my business? Do I need all these big bundled suites? Or can I just say, you know what, you guys haven't used this product in over 3 months, we're not going to continue, we're not going to offer you a subscription license, but instead offer it over to the power users of Adobe products as a whole. And frankly, there's a cost advantage by doing so, so you can always reduce your overall spend by consolidating, looking at that, what's my cost per desktop? We kind of spoke a little bit briefly in that question on asset management and the audits, but highly recommend. Always have a firm understanding of what you own versus what you have installed. Typically, when Adobe audits, they audit for a couple of reasons. First, they know how many times the key has been activated. So if you bought 10 Photoshops and the key's been used 110 times, red flag. They did that. They started that on CS5, CS5.5, and CS6, so they know exactly how many times the key's been used, and it goes to Acrobat 10 in that regard. So anything 10, 11, they know exactly how many times that key's been activated. So look to resolve deltas, but do it intelligently. Don't just resolve an installation delta. Let's resolve the functionality delta. What do they actually need? Is there a way to just, reharvest those licenses and supply them with a license at a lower cost versus just resolving a delta? Last point, kind of touched on it, is just the usage, which I touched on a bit, but really just profile out. If you have a metering tool, so you can actually see how many times the product's been used, over what length of time. They opened it 3 times this month for a total of 53 seconds. They do not need a license. And then also the last point is just always transaction control when it comes down to how you buy. So a lot of organizations need to immediately charge back, which is fine. That's their right. But just remember, it's about $200 Gartner average to push a PO from one side of the building to the other. So if you transact many times a month, there are ways to optimize that. And then with Creative Cloud, as soon as you add a user, you have 30 days to actually resolve that installation. So anything on the Creative Cloud subscription model, think of it as monthly true-ups. So you can put through 1 transaction a month for any additional seats that you added, and you're fine, and you're 100% in compliance. A couple things here on just what's involved with the product that can assist. So first and foremost is the Creative Cloud Packager. So I referenced something about IT being in control, but in essence, on the administration site for the VIP, you're offered the Creative Cloud Packager tool. So it links on and adds on to any of your deployment toolkits you have out there now. Any of them, absolutely any of them. And what it does is IT pulls down the executable files of the Adobe Cloud, enters in the Adobe Cloud, the Creative Cloud Packager, and creates an image. You can create 1, you can create 100. You determine what product sets you actually want to deploy to what end user. You can determine the characteristics of the actual deployment. So, if there's an error, do you want the deployment to stop or just, move on and keep resolving and keep deploying? So that Creative Cloud Packager, this is huge when it comes down to IT's in control. End users don't have to touch any of the products, any of the downloads or updates. IT is 100% back in control. So then next point is just more or less just a bit of advice. Look at the requests that come in. So how many requests for a single standalone product come in, and know what the overall investment is. I'll respond to the members of the or the attendees with a document called the Creative Cloud Buying Guide. So in essence, it lists out the price of every single standalone product and every single suite, as well as Creative Cloud. So the next time a Photoshop comes in, you can look at it and say, well, wait a minute, Photoshop's $650, or I could get Creative Cloud for $480. I'm going to go back to that Photoshop request and find out if that person has anything else on their desktop. Because if they do, it's a blatant overspend, and you should push over to the cloud. But everything is relative. Depreciate your software on your own scale. So if you want to stay latest and greatest and you upgrade every year, cloud makes perfect sense. If you buy a CS6 and sit on it for 3-4 years, okay, that's fine. It doesn't make sense to move over to the cloud. Just know that CS6, it's a plateaued product. It's just never going to get latest and greatest. So eventually, and I would say within the next 12 to 18 months, you'll start to have functionality problems. File share, buttons don't work, functions don't work when you're integrating and collaborating with cloud users or subscription users. The functionality deltas. Charlie, you should have updated your slide. There's way more than 6 updates. There's over 350 by June 17th. So it kind of points to that once again is, when does it hit that point of, okay, I just can't share. He used a Photoshop photo blur technique. I can't edit that. I only have a CS6 Photoshop. I don't get that. So at what point in time does it reach critical mass that you need to transition over to cloud? Next point is kind of an interesting one. The way that files are created using perpetual CS6 versus cloud CS6 they're tagged differently. The naming conventions are different. Doesn't seem like it matters much, but this is more or less a tick behind. If you have 100 gigabytes of online storage, at any point in time, you can go into your, let's say, your internal drives and say, okay, well, we're not ready to use cloud storage yet, but how optimized are we? What would it look like? How many gigabytes would we actually move over? So you can go into your internal drives and sort by file name, sort by the type, and say, okay, well, 46% of our files in our marketing department or advertising were created using cloud licenses that we could have stored all 46% of that up in the cloud storage instead of on our servers. So it's one of those things where you can answer the question if ever asked by your, CEO, CFO, CIO, how ready are we to actually move over files to the cloud? Does it make sense? I mean, can we push off a hardware refresh if we move these files over? So everything's relative, and it's up to your organization's governance and regulations, but it's something to think about. Last point, always wait for more. As mentioned a couple times, the Creative Cloud product makes perfect sense for power users, but what about a single Dreamweaver? So there's already additional product offerings on Adobe.com. Those are individuals. Those are not corporate editions. And their price point in the United States is $20 a month. So you can grab an InDesign, a single point product for $20 a month. Well, I read the writing on the wall. So as soon as the corporate editions of the single point products, I would expect that price point to be roughly the same. Or else, frankly, Adobe Corporate is competing with Adobe e-tail on the Adobe.com site. So I would typically look at $20 to $30 a month for point products. And there's kind of inkling and rumors around the Acrobat price point. And I personally think it's going to be about $10 to $15 per month on Acrobat. But wait for it. I would highly advise against an all-in buy-in. Test. Get some people, get some very smart people with the Creative Cloud license and see how they do. Kind of brings to the end of the presentation. I'm going to unmute the line for any last-minute questions, and let me know if you want to go back to a particular slide, review a point. Just let me know what information you need from me.
I have a question on Audit, Adobe Audit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that every time the Adobe products are activated, that they get a ping or they get an entry into their database. Yep. If you've got an active turnover on workstations where you're refreshing them, where the business is refreshing them quite frequently, so you wipe out the image and reinstall an image. How does a company reconcile that sort of situation where the licensing isn't being abused, it's just being reused a lot because of a refresh cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. Typically a refresh is every 2 to 3 years. So Adobe's conscious of that. So they know if there's 50 Photoshops and it's been installed 100 times, 110 times, that's not out of whack. It really comes down to if it's like 5, 6, 7, 8 times the amount of entitlements that you own is when the red flag is raised. So Adobe does have a formula, which I've been trying for years to get my hands on, but I'm just not successful yet, of trying to figure out, where is the yellow flag to red flag turnover? Is it at 100% of, is it doubling the amount of entitlements you have on the activation side? Is it 150% or 200%? So there's not necessarily a way around that. It's just kind of know full well. I mean, Adobe does take into account that, first off, you could have 2 installations. Like, let's say you have 50 Photoshops. That key could be installed 100 times, with secondary use rights. So they know the keys are going to be used way more than the actual entitlement. It's just when it's drastically out of control that that red flags happen. Okay, I can give everybody a few minutes back in their day. Please let me know. As you can see, my email address is up on the screen, as well as telephone, and I know I work with many of you already, but let me know if you have any additional questions, or if you need some additional information. I'll make sure you get that, and we're always here to help. So, Adobe's changing light years faster than a lot of publishers. So as we get information, we'll relay that out to our customer base. So much appreciative of everyone's time. Hope you have a great rest of the afternoon and have a great Memorial Day.